program will begin shortly. Launch sequence. Activate. Warning, the following content is not politically correct. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the channel today, everyone. I'm your host, Sarah Higdon. This is Transform to Freedom, and obviously, this is not my studio. So today's stream is going to be a little bit different. I am watching my best friend's cat. You guys may know Maggie Anders. This is her cat. And I'm watching Thomas. And we are going to have the stream tonight because, we had to do it. It's Monday night, and I got internet access. But tonight's stream will be a little bit different than it normally is, just because I am streaming off of my single computer screen, where I normally have 3 screens to run the show. I only have one, so I won't be able to necessarily see or communicate. I won't be able to put your guys' comments as much on the screen as I usually am, because I have other windows and stuff open. But again, thank you all for joining. Thomas is a sweetheart, but maybe he'll stay on screen. Maybe he won't. But yeah, so it's been kind of a crazy week, but also just like my day has been absolutely crazy insane, because if you follow me on Twitter, had a really good interaction today, actually last night, with the one, the only J.K. Rowling, who is obviously love J.K. Rowling, but had a really good interaction with her. She responded to me on Twitter, and it just kind of blew up to where this post is now sitting at 1 million impressions, right? And it's kind of nuts. So it's been a really interesting and weird day. So, but here's what it is. I'll bring it up. So if you didn't see, John Oliver, which show does John Oliver run? Is that one of the Comedy Central shows? I don't know. I don't actually watch John Oliver, but on this episode, he claimed that there was no safety issues or fairness issues in having males compete with females, and that basically the left should continue to push harder for in trans issues rather than step back from the trans issues. I think that's a mistake, obviously, because we don't need more people stepping out into the trans issues. I think we do need to take a step back. And a lot of that did cause the election. But so here's what John Oliver said. We'll talk about this in a second.
Ads on that one issue. And it was frustrating to see the Harris campaign fail to formulate a response, especially because it's pretty easy to do. Watch, I'll do it for you right now. As we've discussed before, there are vanishingly few trans girls competing in high schools anywhere. Even if there were more, trans kids, like all kids, vary in athletic ability, and there is no evidence they pose any threat to safety or fairness. It is very weird for you to be so focused on this subject. And finally, if you genuinely want to address the biggest concern for most girls who play high school sports, you'd be less worried about this and more about the creepy assistant volleyball coach who keeps liking their posts on fucking Instagram. Ads on that.
So let's take this step by step. There's relatively few, right? So this is the cycle of progressive discourse, to where they say, first it's not happening, then it's happening but it's rare, and then you're a bigot if you don't think it should be happening. He says there's no claim that there's a safety safety issue with males competing against sports. And as Gays Against Groomers notably pointed out, yes, Peyton McNabb suffered severe head injuries after a male athlete spiked a volleyball. And volleyballs are not necessarily the hardest thing, but spiked a volleyball, and she got a traumatic brain injury. And I saw a post from her mom on Twitter too. It's not even just that. She also has her, what is it? I don't know. I think it's the L3 and L4 is what she said. I'm not sure about the numbers, but she said have compressed into it. So the L3 is compressed into the L4, causing major neck issues that they can't just like treat. I mean, neck injuries are extremely difficult to treat. Like broken necks are like obviously sometimes fatal, but it's not. I don't think it's a broken neck, but it's at the same time it's not a good injury. It's a hard injury to deal with, and yes, she's doing that. So J.K. Rowling responded to the Gays Against Groomers tweet, responded to John Oliver, and she said nothing about this feels good because John Oliver generously gave his time for my charity, and I liked him very much when I met him, but God knows if I ever need an example of motivated reasoning and confirmation bias, it's this video for you. An undoubtedly intelligent person spouts absolute bullshit to support something he wants to be true, but isn't. According to the UN, female athletes we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but according to the UN, female athletes lost nearly 900 medals to trans-identified men competing against them in women's sports categories. Girls have been ousted from teams to make way for boys. Boys have seriously injured playing against trans-identified men. See Peyton McNabb mentioned below again and again. I've come up against men who argue exactly what Oliver does here, using the very same talking point with a straight face. The believe the science guys will say, actually, we don't yet have enough data to say whether men and boys are stronger and faster than women and girls. The Be Kind crew can't see the issue for what it is. Why are you bothered? It only affects a tiny minority of females. She goes on, but I'm not going to read it all. You can go to her tweet. She's right though. It doesn't matter how many it's affecting. It's an issue. It's an issue for all of them. She concludes by saying, if you want to tell the world you're happy to watch females suffer injury, humiliation, and the loss of sporting opportunities to bolster an elitist postmodern ideology embraced by a minute fraction of the world's population, fair enough, you're allowed your opinion. But if you just told girls they don't deserve fair sports, maybe rethink using all too real and common sexual predation against young women as a punchline for your edgy closing jokes. Absolutely. And this is the thing is, y'all know, if you've watched me for a long enough period of time, that this is something that I've talked about for a very long time. In fact, the first YouTube video that I put out there that really kind of blew my channel up a little bit, it's the first one. I still didn't get over, I mean, this was well before I even had 1,000 subscribers on my channel. But me and Ariel Scarcella did a video about the trans fighter. Not the first one who was, her name's escaping me right now, but it was the second trans fighter. We did a YouTube video about that in September, I think it was September of 2021. And that was the first video of mine that really started to take off. So really the first video that I did that made any headway on this channel was talking about trans athletes and how it's unfair for males to compete in female sports. So I've been on this beat for a very long time. It wasn't Fallon Fox. No, Jen, I see you put. No, so it wasn't Fallon Fox. It was the other one after Fallon Fox. It's funny because about 2020, before that video came out, Fallon Fox blocked me on social media because I said, "Hey, if you want a fair fight, why don't we fight? Because I'm a trained athlete. Let's go. Let's strap the gloves on and let's fight." Fallon Fox has 10 pounds on me, but we're both males, and so it would still be a fairer fight than what she's doing now. Obviously, that garnered me a block. I forget what the latest one is, but if you scroll through the channel, you can see, actually, you don't even have to scroll that far because you can go to my top videos, and it's like the third or fourth one on the list for my top videos. But yeah, so I've been on this beat for a while, and I completely agree. If you remember last year, so actually, let me take a step back. I'll say this was my response. So I said, I'm trans, and I'm a high-performing former athlete, including 7.5 years in the Army. A lot of McLaughlin. You're right. You're absolutely right, SES. I said, including 7.5 years in the Army, been on HRT for 5.5 years, and still prove that if I competed against women in sports, I still have an advantage. I was on the path to proving it by breaking the female squat record until my hamstring. I pulled my hamstring when I was in the Army, and that injury basically sidelined me. I'm still feeling that almost a year later. But I'm still performing in the 80th percentile on a spin bike, even after never riding a bike before 2020. And this is the case, right? I am a high-performing athlete. I was in the Army for 7.5 years. I'm air assault, airborne qualified. I would max out my push-ups and sit-ups in almost every PT test I ever took. I wasn't much of a runner, but I almost maxed my run in basic training, and that's in the male standards. I've trained mixed martial arts my whole life, mostly wrestling for most of my whole life, but then I trained a little bit of mixed martial arts in the Army and while I was in the Army and everything like that. So I can tell you, and if you remember last year, I was doing this squat record. I was going to break the female squat record, the raw female squat record, and within like 4 months, I never did squats like ever in my life, and within like 4 months, I would have broken I would have beaten all the females in that. In the latest, like the last like 3 competitions, I would beat all the females, no matter the weight category or anything like that. And that was after like 3 months. I was lifting 305 off the rack, the rack, and doing like 2-3 inch squats just to get used to having that weight going down a little bit, squatting a little bit. I ended up, so the record was 285. And again, that old injury, because I'm 37 years old, my body's beat up from the military. So it's more like a 47-year-old body, just from how beat up it is. And I was still able to get that close. And I'm still, once I heal from this injury, I'll be back at it again and training at it again. But it just shows that I've been on hormones for 5.5 years. It'll be 6 years in March. And no matter how long I've been on them, I've lost some performance, but it's not enough to erase the biological advantage that I would have. And I've spoke about this, like I said, a lot in my time online. So this is nothing new if you've been watching me for a while. But at this point, it's not right for any male to compete against females, whether it's rare or not. It's a complete affront to Title IX, because if you start allowing males to compete in female sports, they are taking scholarships, they're taking opportunities, they're taking all this stuff away from females, the same people who they originally were supposed to be there to protect. And no, you can't change your sex, so trans athletes are not female. Don't know how many times we have to go over this. So it's sad to see somebody like John Oliver, saying this when he clearly, I don't even know if he would necessarily believe it, or if it's just ideological capture in that area. I'm not sure. But yeah, so that's what I've been dealing with, this craziness all day, because as you can see, my post got 1 million, it hit 1 million views. As of right now, it's sitting at 1 million views. So it's been an interesting day. I've been happy to see most of the responses have been good. The negative responses are generally the people who, they don't really like me anyways. They've been after me for a while online anyways. So I don't really worry too much about those responses. What I do appreciate is Miss Rowling saying that, commenting and saying, respect, thank you for this. And y'all know my post was on the Hill this morning? Wait. Jen, you're blowing up my mind, because I didn't know that my post got that much view. Okay. Now I have to go look at that, because I'm kind of blown away. I'm going to go check that out. If you can, send it to me via like DM or something. Yeah, that's crazy. But it's really, I'm really glad that it's been that well received, that appreciated, because I've been doing this for a while, and these types of days are nice. And like I said, most of the response have been good. So it wasn't even just J.K. Rowling. I mean, Sharon Davies, Olympian, she said thank you for her honesty. And this is the thing, is like y'all know, I love and respect these women. They are amazing women that are out here standing up for their equality, their sports, everything like that. We may have some differences in some areas, but we've never sat down and had conversations about, where we can come together. And I think that's what really needs to happen. I think that's what can really bring us together. One of the comments that I actually want to highlight too was this person actually asked me, what is a trans woman? Most people, they ask this question and they don't really get a firm response on it. So my answer, again, you guys have followed me for a while, so you know my answer on this, or you should. So a trans woman is a male with gender dysphoria who has an uncomfortability with their secondary sex characteristics and a deep innate wish that they were born as the opposite sex, straight out of the DSM-5. So they take hormones and have surgery to change their appearance to make themselves more comfortable and blend into society as the opposite sex, even though they're not and never could be. And those are the realities that we need to live with. You can't change your sex. You are simply trying to blend in the best you can into society and not cause disruptions. I got a lot of people said they've never heard such an astute answer as that. They'd never heard something so clear and concise that actually made sense from trans people. And I guess that's why that's why I have this show. I guess that's why I'm out here doing this type of stuff, because I totally believe that. I totally believe that most people have not heard an answer like that. And I've used it a lot. I've said it on multiple different shows, but I feel like people want to look at what the activists put out there. And so I see people ask this question all the time, and they're like, I've never heard a good answer. And then I'll throw this answer out there, or I won't actually answer. And it's like, people won't see the answer that I've had. So I'm always obviously trying to put this out there, because this, I think, is the type of answer for what is a trans woman that can bring people together, you know? And it's something that, like, me and Blair and Buck and all of us, we kind of push this out there, but it's hard to get noticed and it's hard to get traction and for a lot of people to see this. So the fact that 77,000 people on Twitter saw that response to the question, I'm going to say it really makes me feel good, because we're finally getting it out there. We're finally getting our voices out there and finally being able to, you know, get my voice out there. It's been interesting. I mean, I've gained 2,000 new followers on Twitter, and I appreciate that so much, because I can actually speak to more people and push these types of, you know, conversations when I'm out, when more people follow me. So I definitely appreciate it. Thank you, Witchy Bishy. It says, thank you for always being a voice of reason amongst the unreasonable. I have much respect for you and your courage to be yourself without needing to disrespect others. Thank you. Yeah, sometimes that's hard. I won't lie. But I do realize that when there are people coming for me, especially in certain instances, a lot of times it's probably better for me just not to speak. Because no matter what I say, it's going to come across as mansplaining, disrespecting, even if I'm just standing up for myself. So I saw that a little bit today, but I've gotten a lot better about just not saying everything that comes into my head. So yeah, thank you. But we're going to move on from that. That's a little bit enough about me and me in the news today and me on the Hill today. That's crazy. Thank you. Let's move on to, we're going to go back to the election, right? So we're going to talk about, you know, we talked about this a little bit last week. The left has completely doubled down on everything that they thought, like when they lost this election, and now they're still pushing the same narratives. I think I saw something earlier today where The View was still pushing the racist narratives and the bigotry narratives, and they're pushing all the same narratives still that lost them the election. And so here is Whoopi Goldberg last week.
So it turns out every holiday season, political talk can be a tough topic to get into. But given the results of last week's election, Yale psychiatrist Dr. Amanda Calhoun suggested to Joy Reid that some people should sit this one out. Take a look.
There is a push, I think just a societal norm that if somebody is your family, that they are entitled to your time. And I think the answer is absolutely not. So if you are going into a situation where you have family members, where you have close friends who you know have voted in ways that are against you, like what you said, against your livelihood, and it's completely fine to not be around those people and to tell them why, you know, to say, I have a problem with the way that you voted because it went against my very livelihood and I'm not going to be around you this holiday. I need to take some space for me.
So, yeah. What do you think?
I think everybody needs to do what's right for them. You know, I think you need to look into yourself, and if going to a family gathering or with friends where it's going to stress you out, then don't go. I'll tell you, Al has 5 children.
Your husband.
My husband has 5 children. Most of them or their spouses voted for Trump. The problem is those 5 children have 13 grandchildren he refuses not to see and not to be part of their lives. And so for our family, I mean, he has told them, I will not let politics split up our family. Al and I voted for Kamala, others didn't. He is going to see his grandchildren come hell or high water. That's the choice that works for him.
I'm all for healthy boundaries, but I tend to think mashed potatoes are the great equalizer. Like, you don't want to spend Thanksgiving by yourself because you can't set politics aside. Like, I find that every day in every job I've worked in social circles I've run in, I've been around people who have different politics than me, and it's never gotten in the way of having friendships with them. I wouldn't have had I wouldn't have had any friends.
I wouldn't have had any holidays if I had to only pick the ones where everyone agreed with me. And so now there are times,
and I wouldn't be with you.
I check in with myself and say, am I up for this? Because I also know struggling with mental health, there are times I'm not, and that's okay. You step away, but it will never be the defining point, because toxic personalities don't have political affiliations. It's a personality trait that sucks, and we all are related to people like that. So whatever your reason is, I would never let my politics be the reason I don't show up to see my family, because they won't always be there.
I'm going to disagree. I completely understand her point, because I really do feel that this candidate, President-elect Trump, is just a different type of candidate. From the things he's said and the things he's done and the things he will do, it's more of a moral issue for me. And I think it's more of a moral issue for other people. We're just, I would say it was different when, let's say, Bush got elected. You may not have agreed with his policies, but you didn't feel like he was a deeply flawed person, deeply flawed by character, deeply flawed in morality.
Like a lot of Dems called him deeply flawed and demonized him.
But you got to admit, they're very different figures. I mean, you along with Milley and along with John Kelly warned us about how deeply flawed he was as a candidate. And so I think when people feel that someone voted not only against their families, but against them and against people that they loved, I think it's okay to take a beat.
I don't have to like him to respect the voters.
Yeah,
if it meant not seeing
I
your children?
appreciate the voters, but I will say, somebody who tells me that my child is wrong because of how he or she feels, that tells me that they shouldn't be allowed to be who they are with my permission, I have to question it. I don't want to put my kid in that position.
Exactly.
I don't want to put my gay child in a position where she has to sit with someone who doesn't understand her and feels like it's okay to just blurt all that out. That's just me. But I feel like that with mixed families, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
There are certain things where you don't have to put your family in.
Well, Whoopi is talking about something completely different than just voting for somebody differently, right? So this is not the first time I've heard this. I've had other people in my that have come to me asking about these questions about what is it that Trump has said or is going to do that's so scary to trans people or black people or all these things. And it's this whole thing, the whole idea to cut off your family if they voted differently from you. It's exactly what we talked about last week. It's cult vibes. Bertie Rose nails it. It's complete cult vibes. If you cut off your family because they don't agree with you on this stuff, it's a cult. And I do believe that there are so many people, especially in the trans community, that have bought into this narrative that Trump is so bad on trans issues and he's going to make it literally he's going to make it illegal to be trans and all this stuff. That's what they're being told. That's what they believe. And I'm just like, do you guys forget civics? Do you forget that that's not the system that we have, that we still need 60 votes in the Senate to pass all this stuff? And then we talked about last week, literally Caitlyn Jenner's down at Mar-a-Lago helping with the transition period and all this stuff. I don't get where I get where the fear comes from, but it's people that live in such an isolated bubble that this is all they feel. It's all that's being pushed onto them, and they don't actually see or think clearly about these issues. When I'm in some of these spaces, when I'm actually reading different posts and all this stuff, and I'm talking to people, I'm like, who are you surrounded by? that you are this scared of the outcomes of a presidential election. And my whole idea, though, like, it's like if one president can make you this scared, if you think that the president has this much power, don't you maybe think that the government itself has too much power? I mean, that just means that the federal government, you believe, has too much power, yet it's the same people that want to push their narratives into society. It's like the same people who want to push their ideals onto you are the ones that are so, like, they want the bigger government, yet it's generally conservatives and libertarian that want less government. So I just don't understand why it's so scary for people. But I do, because again, they're trying to isolate you from your family. They're trying to cut you off from your family. And that's what cults do. And so we have to call it what it is. I grew up in a family where some people in my family were conservative. Obviously, I grew up fairly conservative. I was a neocon for a very long time. But then other people in my family, like in my almost not quite immediate family, were liberals. And our whole family was live and let live, right? And that's kind of the way it was. And we could get together on Thanksgiving and have a meal. And it was just it's always nice to see your family. And just not, I mean, I kind of had a rule. I never talked politics at family dinners, but some people do. I don't know why, but yeah. So honestly, I mean, yes, do what's best for you. But at the end of the day, I think it's ridiculous. And they're just pushing this narrative that Trump is so evil. I think it's hilarious that she was saying, oh, Bush and Trump were such different candidates and politicians. I'm like, excuse me, what? Like, did you not remember the Bush years? Did you not remember how much you demonized Bush? I mean, in the early 2000s, George Bush was also called literally Hitler. So it's really kind of crazy to me that they're trying to now say, oh, George Bush is this great guy. It's like the left is becoming the neocons. This is what we talked about before on the show. The left are the neocons, and because he's not, Trump is a New York liberal who used to be welcomed on The View with open arms. It's only until he ran for president that they're like, oh no, you can't do this. You're not one of us anymore. They literally ostracized him. He was a New York liberal. He was one of them. Up until about 2014, he was one of them. I don't get it. All right. But since the election, have you seen this? This is kind of going crazy, and I think it's kind of hilarious. I've talked about this a little bit. I don't know what we're going to call this, but remember, Kamala Harris's campaign was the campaign of joy, right? Only then it turned out to not be about joy. And then it was really interesting because going to see Trump rallies and going to different rallies and doing stuff with the Republicans, like unity events and stuff like that, and seeing this all up close, everybody was excited, and literally everybody was doing, I don't know, is it called the Trump Shuffle? But they were all doing the YMCA dance that Trump does. And it was literally everybody was having a blast. And now that Trump won, all these people, especially like the athletes and stuff, it's kind of hilarious. Or like the athletes are just now out there celebrating with the Trump dance. It's hilarious. Trump's got his own TikTok dance. I mean, if you were running Kamala Harris's campaign, why did they not come up with like a TikTok dance? That would have like been better. Trump had the dance. So here's one of them. This was at the UFC event, which Trump was in attendance for, which the whole cabinet seemed to be in attendance for this one. So it was great.
Like a light heavyweight, and I think that's the 235-pound weight. Like a light heavyweight, and I think that's the 235-pound
Yeah, that's
weight.
great. Let me see. I don't know if I have another one. And then he went on to pay tribute to Trump, who was again in the audience. So
Sure, I'm sure.
And then there was this at the end, he went over, he gave Trump the belt, and then had a pretty good there. But then the celebration, that was Saturday night, then the celebrations didn't stop there. Oakland, which actually, is it Oakland now, or the Oakland Raiders now moved to Vegas? Don't know about that one. But the Raiders touchdown dance is now the Trump shuffle. And lastly, my Detroit Lions, which used to be like a scary thing to say, was that they were my Detroit Lions. I grew up in Michigan, so grew up watching the Lions. But this is them.
So that time there they blitzed. They brought 5 on that one, and this time bringing 6. 4th and 7. There they got him. They got him with Reader. And coming through, Smith. Zadarius Smith with a sack in his Lions. So that time there they blitzed. They brought 5.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jen. I think you're right. I think Trump comes off as authentic, whereas if they were trying to do a TikTok dance, it would come off very inauthentic, and she would be stiff and wouldn't be doing it. Where his was very organic. They would be playing the YMCA, and he would just be doing the shuffle. Like that was his like stand there and dance like shuffle, and it's taken off. Now, I did see some people being like, "Oh, all these people are looking at the shuffle, the celebration." Like there's people comparing it to what's his name? Taking a knee, Kaepernick taking a knee. So they're comparing it to Kaepernick taking a knee and other people taking a knee. Now, and now Kaepernick's not in the league anymore, and they claim that that's, racism behind that and all that. Here's the thing. One, the Trump shuffle is a dance as a celebration. It's not political. Well, it's a little political, but not really. It's just kind of people are stepping out of their, they're stepping out of their shell because they've been so afraid to even speak out, or else they'd be fined. So, or they'd be, So the difference, though, is Kaepernick was taking a knee during the national anthem, which is, it's the right to protest. But it's also his place of business. So people didn't like that they were watching football to see politics, but mostly they didn't watch football to see protest. And especially somebody that hated the country so much that they were protesting during the national anthem. Now, if it wasn't his place of business, obviously he has got a right to do it. But the other thing is he had a right to do it, but he did it at a point where he was not he wasn't an elite quarterback anymore. He was sidelined. He was a bench player, and he did it. And so he did it for attention simply because he lost his starting gig. And yeah, Grasshopper, there's a time and a place for this stuff too. Like this is more of a celebration, whereas that was a protest against the country. Is the right place to protest at your place of business during the national anthem? I don't think so. I don't think you protest during the national anthem, but at the same time, if the NFL allowed him to, it's one thing, and then the fans have a reason, have a opportunity to have a grievance with it. Again, this is like the free market argument, right? It's not the government trying to crack down and saying he can't kneel during the national anthem. It's that the fans don't want to see it. And it's and the fans saw it as disrespectful to the country. This isn't disrespectful to the country. This is actually more patriotic because it's a celebration of and having fun with a dance that the new president does. It's apples and oranges in the situations that were being done. And again, I'm not going to be mad at Kaepernick for doing it, but he also can't, call NFL players slaves and then try to get back into the NFL. He also can't be a mediocre quarterback with no skills and then get back into the NFL. That's the problem, is he's not an NFL level quarterback. That's why he's not playing in the NFL. Teams gave him a shot after that. So this is completely a different situation. But let's move on to the cabinet. Well, not necessarily the cabinet right now, but we're going to talk about the Department of Government Efficiency with Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk getting ready to go in there and cut some stuff out. Now, here's what Vivek had to say about what they plan to do.
You've got what has been called a deep state. You've got people who have been career bureaucrats in place right now. Didn't President Biden put in plans to ensure that you're not going to be able to fire those people at all? How do you get around that? And, I asked Joni Ernst, are you for term limits? She says, yes, I am for term limits, as long as the people around me are also for term limits. That's not in place right now. So how do you get rid of those people who are dug in?
Well, a lot of what's happened is President Biden has made a lot of changes trying to entrench the administrative state. The Supreme Court has slapped them on the wrists numerous times. So we're working with a legal landscape here that is historic. You think about a president of the United States like Donald Trump, elected with the mandate he's been given, both chambers of Congress belonging to Republicans, a 6-3 conservative majority in the Supreme Court. Maria, if we don't downsize the federal government now, it's never going to happen in the future as well. So this is a historic opportunity. We're not actually going to squander this, but I think part of the key is to move quickly, to move effectively. I think that mass deregulation that I talked about earlier, that gives us the industrial logic to then make cuts to that bureaucracy, and moving quickly is our objective.
Have you? So you've got what has been called.
They're going to go in and cut. So right now, they're already starting. So they have been beginning to expose dumb federal spending. And I've kind of pointed this out. Rand Paul has, for the last, I don't know how many years, Rand Paul has created this. He's created his annual Festivus spending thing. So for Festivus, he goes out and he highlights all of the fraud, waste, and abuse of government spending. I think that is the first place to where they need to start. So they've already started to look at some of this stuff, though, and they're looking at costly soap dispensers to drag shows in South America. So I think there's something in here where I can find this. So Elon Musk has basically determined that he can find $1.9 trillion in government waste to cut. We will also have a leaderboard for most insane dumb spending of your tax dollars. So they're going to kind of keep things going. Who was that? That was Vivek Ramaswamy, who was a presidential candidate. You guys are talking to each other, I think, too. So the NIH, which Americans got COVID, included and this is a lot of the white coat waste, if you guys know, I've done some content, what the white coat waste has exposed in the past. A lot of what Rand Paul has kind of pointed to was a lot of this, spending that they've done. And so they have one that included a $3 million study on injecting hamsters with steroids in order to see whether current drugs for aggressive use suppress steroid-induced aggression. The NIH spent an additional $2.3 million jabbing 6-month-old beagle puppies with cocaine and $1.1 million providing unlimited alcohol to lab mice. Like that's like what the NIH has spent money on in years has been crazy when you look at, Rand Paul's festive spending. And what's really interesting, a lot of this stuff, the budget timeframes had run out on them, and then they continue to spend on them. Here, outrageous spending for the U.S. military. The Pentagon was revealed to have spent $192,000 on Starbucks espresso machines for the U.S. Navy between 2017 and 2021. The U.S. Air Force has been flying C-17 transport aircraft since 2011, but spent almost $1 million, too much for spare parts to keep them flying. Listen, I was a logistics officer in the Army, and I saw it was crazy to me because we had to keep such meticulous books and what we were spending money on. But even as a platoon leader, I saw some of the fraud, waste, and abuse that happened even when it came to ammo spending. But I didn't see a lot of this stuff. Like, this is crazy. And then it turns out, the military failed. The DOD failed another audit. I don't think they've ever actually passed an audit. And so I don't think that the DOD has ever even passed an audit. And and we're talking that they misappropriate and they misuse, like they lose millions and billions of dollars every year. But one other thing, so prisoners received $1.71 million in Social Security benefits because apparently no one bothered to check if they were available for work. They also spent $15 million on Anthony Fauci's security since he retired as the director of National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Listen, I think there's a lot of work to do, Elon, and there's a lot of places that they can go to cut spending. And so Elon and Vivek, I don't doubt that they could find 1.9 trillion somewhere in the budget to cut, because our budgets are like thousands of pages long and nobody reads them. And so if you can get somebody who can just sit down and read and can read very quickly, they will find all that stuff. And I've seen somebody actually be able to read the entire budget who was like a speed reader and can read 1,000 pages in like 20 minutes. I've seen that happen. And yeah, there's a lot that they can cut. But moving on. So we didn't talk about this last week, but we knew that this was coming. RFK Jr. was assigned as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. He says, Trump said, for too long, Americans have been crushed by the industrial food complex, and drug companies have engaged in deception, misinformation, and disinformation when it comes to public health. The safety and health of all Americans is the most important role of any administration. Listen, I think this is what we wanted, right? So we got kind of everything we wanted. When we look at how this cabinet is shaking out, we're getting what we voted for. Like, we got RFK Jr. as Health and Human Services. Now, I'm going to tell you, I think Marco Rubio is a war hawk and does not need to be the Secretary of State, but we'll get there when we get there. I I don't know much about the new Secretary of Defense, but again, we'll get there when we get there. I was thinking that Tulsi would be the Secretary of Defense, but she got a really good position anyway. So we're kind of getting there, and we all knew that RFK Jr., this was the only spot that made sense for him, as this is the area where he is the best at, and this is the only reason why I would have voted for him. So I think that this is the unity group that we talked about, right? This is the Captain Planet assembly team that makes the Trump administration great. And I'm glad to see this. Yeah, the left lost their mind when RFK Jr. was appointed, even though he's been a lifelong Democrat his entire life. This is, I mean, when you look at this cabinet, you have RFK Jr., you have Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump, you have a ton of other people. Like, you have these people who are former Democrats. All of them are former, like they're former Democrats. And the left are losing their mind because they're the Democrats that left the left because actually, I'm not going to say they left the left. I'm going to say the left left them. This is this unity coalition that's coming together where you put in RFK Jr. in health is the only spot that makes sense. Tulsi Gabbard somewhere in the defense agencies is where it makes sense. So yeah, I think this is a great one, and it's really interesting because I think I had something in here too. So yeah, here it is. So not all Democrats are against this appointment. So Cory Booker, and I've talked about him before on the show. Cory Booker, he's I would say I don't agree with him on very much when it comes to like social policy, like socialist policies and stuff like that. But he's been pretty much in the weeds on this for a very long time. He's also worked with, I believe, Rand Paul to expand the Right to Try Act. So you could try, so if you want to try an experimental treatment for any reason, you should be able to do that. So he's pushed that as well, including like psychedelic psychotherapy. So we'll see if he's willing to move on. But he said this about the food industry.
Food in America is making us sick. It's driving the highest levels of disease and suffering in our nation's history. And our food system is putting our farmers in economic crisis, with most American farmers having to work a job off the farm to make ends meet. Why? Because giant, consolidated multinational food corporations make massive profits off of this broken system. More of us have to be aware of what is happening. Our food system is designed to support and subsidize ultra-processed junk foods and not the foods that our doctors are telling us that we should eat most of. Think about this for a second. More than 90% of our federal food subsidies go to the foods that can make us sick, and less than 10% go to the foods nutritionists say should be the majority of our diet. That's why kids in communities all across the country go into a community grocery store and they see a Twinkie-like product cheaper than an apple. Cheap, ultra-processed, subsidized foods, subsidized by your tax dollars, in our farm bill now make up about 73% of the foods in our grocery stores. The leading cause of death in America now is poor diet. Half of Americans, for example, are diabetic or pre-diabetic. What makes this all worse and corrupt is the chemicals in our food system. There are ingredients in our foods that should not be there. Chemicals that are linked to cancer and hormone disruptions. Many ingredients that are banned in other countries. Our food system hurts everyone now. These big companies have controlled our policy in Washington for too long. So for years now, I've joined with others to build a coalition to fight back. From rural farmers who just want to make a living, to parents who just want breakfast cereal that doesn't have harmful chemicals in it, to teachers who know that their kids need to be nourished to learn, to healthcare providers who see that food is what is making people sick. And now we need everyone to join our effort, to join this coalition. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or independent. This isn't a partisan fight. It is literally a fight for our lives. Look, join me, join us. Please pass this video along and let me know if you are ready to join the fight.
I mean, he's right. He's absolutely right when you look at a lot of the stuff. And Jen McMahon, you're absolutely correct. The company that starts with an M is, do I want to say it or not? Yeah, it's Monsanto. I mean, just look at what Monsanto has done in terms of our food and our corn. And the problem is we look at like what's happened. And part of the thing that I'm kind of scared of what they will do, and this is where my libertarian free market brain starts to go into effect when we start talking about this. One of the reasons why we have such high issues, like why high fructose corn syrup is replacing sugar, is because we have so much corn. Why do we have so much corn? Because our government has subsidized it so much that it goes like we can use it for ethanol, we can use it for sugar and foods, which is worse because corn has no nutritional value. And at the same time, this is one of the areas where we'll see what happens, but tariffs on sugar and sugar cane from Caribbean countries, such as the Dominican Republic, will cause sugar to be higher priced in the U.S. and it causes our subsidies cost the corn to be grown at a lower price. And so it's more of an incentive for them to do that. You take away those incentives and cut the regulations on it, I think that you'd have a lot better outcome than just trying to ban high fructose corn syrup and all this other stuff. But I think it needs to be put out there that this stuff really is harmful. And we talked about like hormone disruptors and everything like that. We said, we talked about it on this show before that, 40% of our water supply has PFAS chemicals in it, which is known to cause issues with hormones. What happens when you cause issues with hormones? Well, we do know that, at least some of the rise in homosexuality and the rise in transsexuality and gender dysphoria could possibly be from hormone imbalances in the womb, which we know do cause some of those things. And so we're seeing males have issues with testosterone. We're seeing infertility rates drop, like high rates of infertility. So all of that is in our food. And a lot of this stuff, like you said, is banned in other countries. Even like talking about like gluten, we have so many people now that have like gluten allergies and celiacs, right? But I know people who have gluten intolerance, and when they get their flour and other stuff from Italy, they don't have the same issues as when they eat flour and everything that's from here. And that's all because of the chemicals that are in the stuff here. It also goes back to peanuts, right? So remember there's articles, and you can go look this stuff up out of there. You can see that peanut allergies were created mostly by the government. So the government said, because like a few kids had like severe peanut allergies, the government said kids should not eat peanuts at all. So what that did was these children never were able to exposed to peanuts. So more children developed peanut allergies as a result of the government's ban on peanuts. Yeah, you're right, Jen. When I was a kid, peanut allergies were not a thing. And if they were a rare thing. So the guidance went from do not allow children anywhere near peanuts because some kid, like you couldn't bring peanuts to school because some kid have a severe reaction to it, to now the guidance, I guess, is expose early and often to peanuts so that your children don't have peanut allergies. Like but this is the thing that we always see in terms of stuff, right? So I remember it was like 3 years apart. 1 year, a science magazine said, eat 2 or 3 eggs a day. It's good for you. It's like one of the most beneficial things you can eat. And then a year later, that same magazine said, eating 3 eggs a day causes high cholesterol and you shouldn't eat any eggs, basically. And then a year later, it reversed course again. They don't know what they're talking about. Eggs are actually very good for you. And they say, oh, eat egg whites. But then the thing about eating egg whites is if you're getting the protein from the egg whites, your body needs the fat from the yolk to be able to even process all the protein in the egg whites. And this is the way that your body kind of works together. It's just people don't understand how nutrition works and how your body needs fat. And if your body doesn't use fat that you eat, it actually gets rid of it. It doesn't store as fat. Sugar and glucose is the only thing that actually stores as fat in the body. And it's like I remember growing up and people were like, oh, don't eat that, it's fattening. So you would get the light version or the low fat version, but the low fat version actually isn't good for you because your body needs good fats. And usually in those things, it's the good fats that are good for you, and it helps you to process protein and everything like that. So hopefully we can actually get into a place where we know what's in our food, what's good. But I was making fun of cereal, right? So somehow I actually think, and this is something that most people don't know either, right? So, avocados have amazing fat in them. Like avocados are high in calories, but they don't really do as much against your calorie count because they're high in calorie, but they're just mostly high fat. And it's that really, really good fat. Fish has really good fat as well. You want to incorporate those things. Omega-3s have been linked to preventing cancer, stuff like that. But going back to what we were talking about a little bit, but it's really interesting because when I was growing up, cereal was being pushed as a healthy breakfast. I still believe it is. Like they're still like, oh yeah, eat this cereal. Cereal. If you don't know the history of cereal is basically sugar presented as a breakfast candy. That's why we have so many issues with diabetes in the country, is because we've been promoting sugar as breakfast for a very long time. And yeah, we've been promoting against bacon, which, like as you say, Robbie, is a good fat. Cereal, in my opinion, should be promoting cereal to children should be viewed the same way as promoting cigarettes to children is. It's not good for children to eat because all it is sugar. And it's been promoted as this quick, easy breakfast to eat. It's not good for you. There's no nutritional value in it at all. And what I'll say is, if you go and actually look at what happened. So when the what is it, Philip Morris? Is that the tobacco company? When the big tobacco said they couldn't, when the lawsuits came and they couldn't use like Joe Camel and they couldn't advertise for children anymore, it started to promote this idea that cigarettes weren't good for you. So what did the big tobacco companies actually go do? They went and they studied to see how to make cereal more addictive or how to make foods more addictive. And that's what they did. That's why you can eat a whole bag of chips without getting full and you actually want to eat more. It's because they've added stuff to these foods to make them more addictive. Same with cereal is exactly the same way. They've worked to figure out how they've made cereal more addictive so that you keep eating more and more and more. And so now, hopefully, this whole thing kind of starts to come out. And, I'm not a big fan of regulations, but I think that there should be some at least like honest scientific data that the country is aware of about these types of things. But yeah, so I mean, we've kind of crossed our hour mark like we normally do, but let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard real quick. So obviously, Tulsi Gabbard was was selected as director of national intelligence, which I think is hilarious, but it's a great pick. Because as I said, like if you remember, she was put on the Quiet Skies basically watch list for it wasn't a no-fly list, but it was kind of like a terrorist watch list for people. And so now she is directly in charge of the people that placed her on that watch list. And she's also directly in charge of the NSA, which I hope she scales back and, possibly even closes the NSA, stops them, and she can probably expose everything that Snowden had access to give, and possibly give him that pardon. So I think this is a great opportunity for her. To all the people calling her Russian assets, need to realize that she is a sitting member in the U.S. military. And this is the thing when Hillary Clinton tried that against her, she is a military officer, a current military officer. If you are trying to say that she is a Russian asset, that is basically calling her, saying that she has, she's treasonous, and she needs to, which is punishable by death. And so you better be sure before you levy that stuff against them. So yeah, all the other picks are good. We'll see what happens with Matt Gaetz. It could be a very good a good thing that he gets selected into the DOJ. He's definitely a pit bull. I don't know about some of these accusations, so I'm not going to speak to that stuff. We'll see what comes out in the future months. But at the end of the day, I think we're on the right path. Trump has assembled a pretty good team, so we'll see it, and we'll move forward. So, as always, click that if you made it this far. Click that like and subscribe button. Follow me across all social media platforms, and I will see you next time.